What is the least commonly known fact you know? A team of scientists were working to genetically modify bananas to be resistant to tropical race 4, a fungus that destroys the banana but isn't noticeable until it's already too late. The head scientist worked tirelessly, trying to create the perfect banana that was also resistant to TR4. He finally did, but the public complained about the taste. He hung himself. Wow, 0 to 100 there. Literally created the perfect banana and the public wouldn't buy it because it was yucky. They weren't even aware of TR4. When the dwarf planet Eris was originally discovered, the astronomer who found it was a huge Xena warrior princess fan. Until it was officially named, it was known as Xena and its moon was called Gabriel. I have no idea why I know this edit. It's been brought to my attention that Gabriel was not a sidekick. They were in fact soulmates. My apologies to any I offended. Slightly smiling face. They really should have let the dwarves name their own planet IMO. If a compressible fluid flows through a long duct with friction, it will theoretically exit at the speed of sound. Why? I actually had to review my fluid dynamics notes to answer this. Essentially, it's a result of conservation of mass, momentum, and energy. If you work through the math, for a subsonic inlet flow you end up with lower pressure, lower density, and higher velocity as you go downstream. This causes velocity to increase up to Mach 1. Why Mach 1? Cause the behavior of compressible fluids actually changes at Mach 1. Subsonic flows speed up when the area they are flowing through decreases. However, for supersonic flows it is the opposite, that is, flow speeds up when the area increases. This means that when you have choked flow, which is the maximum flow rate you can force through a given area, the flow going through that area is at Mach 1. Edit. Also, this only happens for ducts that are above a critical length that would cause exit velocity to equal Mach 1 for a given inlet velocity. When the duct becomes longer than this, the inlet flow slows down or speeds up such that it exits at Mach 1. Edit 2. Just to clarify for any new readers, it's also only valid for adiabatic flow. That is, there is no heat transfer between the duct and its surroundings. In addition, the analysis assumes constant cross-section area for the duct. Common European pigeon has two long-range bird calls, A and A. Holy, I legit hear this every day at like 8. Sometimes I duet with the pigeons. A shark is the only fish that can blink with both eyes. What function does it serve? Blinking. That it takes 3 times the heat to melt the oxide layer on aluminium than it takes to melt the aluminium itself when welding. Zebras will always move towards a black and white striped wall. What if there is a lion next to the wall? If your eyes each see a different picture, and they're just a little different but not too different, you'll alternate between seeing out of one or your other eye exclusively and seeing a combination of both pictures. Discovered this as my ongoing PhD in visual perception. You didn't say it had to be an interesting fact. Jeremy Bentham's shriveled and embalmed head was used as a football once. It was on display at University College London from 1850 to 1975, when a group of students stole it, demanding that a £100 donation be donated to charity. They returned the head, but it was stolen a second time, and used as a football by prankster students. After it was returned the second time, it was removed from display. Edit. Since posting this I found this banger about Bentham's head, so have fun listening and give them some love. Kids can be so cruel. They didn't decapitate a dude and embalm just the head. Adults did that. A volcanic eruption 70,000 years ago almost killed the entire human population. It caused winter to last from a dozen to 1,000 years, and left an estimated 10,000 breeding pairs of humans. Giggity. Oranges didn't actually exist until humans came along. They're actually a crossbreed between pomelos and tangerines. On that same note, the fruit was named before the color formally existed. Yep, in Europe, they used to call it red yellow, before they came to Asia, saw oranges, and were like, oh, that would be a better name. Sometimes dropping a satellite TV box from 5 feet will fix it. Why, you ask? Sometimes the switching relays that choose between even and odd transponders get stuck. We call it a 5-foot adjustment, when nothing else works as a last resort before sending back. I literally take the bad box outside, hold it out straight-armed and flat, and drop. It worked more often than I'd like to admit. Percussive maintenance at its finest. Alcohol doesn't make you lose your memory, it stops you forming memories while you're drunk. And that's when I had that thought that only blackout drunks and Steve Urkel have. Did I do that? John Mulaney. When losing weight, the lost mass leaves your body through exhaled breath. Same thing backwards. A tree's mass comes from CO2 in the air, not the ground. Blew my mind. Charles Henry Sanson, royal executioner of Paris at the time of the revolution, was in charge of executing revolutionaries and royals. In his diaries, he described particular executions that he found peculiar or difficult, and he wrote about executing Louis Capet. As a religious man who believed in the sanctity of the king, he felt extremely guilty after the king's death and even sought solace with a priest. He was also allowed to keep the pair of shoes worn by the king. His diaries were only divulged decades after the fact, and if the revolutionaries had learned of Sanson's feelings, he would have probably been the next head in the basket. The name Dustin derives from an Old Norse name, Torstein, meaning Thor's stone. Just wait till this guy learns about Thursday. Red hair and blue eyes is the rarest combination. If you're ever planning to beat someone up with a baseball bat, wrap a sock around the end of it so if they grab the bat, it'll just slide right out and you can continue to bash the monsieur. This is the advice I knew I needed. You have my thanks. San Marino's national soccer team have won one single football match ever. They have lost over 300 matches. A lot of common vegetables are man-made by crossbreeding cabbage, similar to the process of developing a new dog breed. Broccoli is the result of Italians breeding cabbage more than 2,000 years ago. The Tesla Model X is too heavy to drive over the Brooklyn Bridge, legally speaking. Despite being incredibly wealthy, IKEA's late founder drove a 30-year-old piece of Volvo. If you were to buy all the bolts in a Pagani Huayra, it would set you back $112,000. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, collard greens, Brussels sprouts and several other vegetables are all cultivars of the same plant, Brassica oleracea. Penguins will offer others for materials for a nest. Fun little known fact: I will also offer for igloo materials. I have some ice in the freezer. There's a law in Germany that says if a beekeeper's bees leave the hive, then they're the legal owner of the bees only as long as they're in pursuit of the monsieur. If for some reason the swarm merges with another beekeeper's bees, then the rightful owner is the beekeeper that remains in pursuit. Like a last man standing kinda deal. I can just imagine an unofficial sport where a group of beekeepers all let their bees free and then start chasing them, and the last one still chasing gets all the bees and all the cash to buy sufficient housing for the bees. Dry erase markers erase permanent markers from nearly anything. This is true. I forgot this, but it's actually very useful. 1 in 100 babies will have a congenital heart defect. It's the #1 birth defect worldwide. When people hear congenital heart defect, they usually think it's just a hole in the heart. While that's true, there's over 35 congenital heart defects anyone can be born with. Only a few are genetic. The rest sadly just happens. And there's no cure. It's lifelong. Even open heart surgery isn't a cure. I have 5 congenital heart defects and I do my best to raise awareness for CHD. Even though it's the #1 birth defect worldwide, somehow it's not well known and oftentimes people don't know the true facts about it. And that needs to change. Due to my health and very long list of other health issues, I can't do a lot. I spend about 90% of the time at home because doing everyday things are getting harder. I'm in my 2nd round evaluation for heart's bilateral lung transplant, but I can do this to educate people about congenital heart defects. Me too. I've got a bicuspid aortic valve along with an irregular beat, murmur, and minor stenosis of the aorta. This past month I was actually cleared to play sports again after it was found that the stenosis in my aorta had subsided by a significant amount, and I can't say I've been happier in my 16 years of having the diagnosis. Pablo Escobar's cartel spent $2,500 a month just for rubber bands to hold all their cash together. They also lost $2 billion a year due to spoilage from rats and mold. The word bookkeeper is the only word with 3 double letters in a row. What about bookkeeping? I stand corrected, waving hand, waving hand, waving hand. Wombats' cubes, their intestines have ridges to shape it so it doesn't roll away in order to mark their territory. If you burned all the oil and natural gas currently estimated to exist in the world all at once, it would only raise the world's CO2 levels to levels Earth has experienced many times in the past. The world would warm a few degrees, coastlines would rise a little, etc. But then there'd be no more oil or natural gas. Problem fixed, right? Wrong. This is not the case for coal. Coal releases far more CO2 per unit than oil or natural gas. If you burned all the coal, we would hit CO2 levels never seen before on the planet. So if you want to cut back CO2 emissions, focus primarily on transitioning from coal power plants to nuclear or other carbon-free power sources. Not that oil isn't a major contributor, but it isn't able to cause nearly as much damage in the long run. I say this isn't commonly known because nearly everyone seems to think the issue is oil and they feel personal guilt for driving too much or not using an electric car or whatever. Nope. Most oil is used by industry, commerce, not by consumers, and coal makes up a bigger percentage of CO2 emissions than oil. Focus on the problem, not what makes you feel better. So, assuming this is true, wouldn't driving a hybrid actually be worse than driving with gas, since most of our chargers are coal-powered? Edit. Sincere question from an idiot seeking to be a little less dumb. Not sarcasm or snark. You can find various articles online that did the calculation. Driving a Tesla powered by a coal central is still better for the environment than driving a modern, gas-powered car. But the really cool thing about going electric is that it keeps getting better. The gas-powered car will always pollute the same amount, but replace a coal plant with renewables and all existing electric vehicles become better. How wide your mouth is actually plays a big role in your attractiveness. Don't ask how I learned this. So is a wide mouth or a small mouth attractive? I'd imagine a nice in between. The largest shadow ever photographed was cast by the rings of Saturn onto the planet's surface. It's the other way around. The planet cast its shadow on its rings. Here is a picture of it. The fatality chance of gunshot to the head is not 100%.